Hey there, my name is Leanne Vogel, and I'm the host of the Keto Diet Podcast, a holistic nutritionist, the best-selling author of the Keto Diet Cookbook, and Keto for Women. Welcome to the Keto Diet Podcast. This is episode 310, and today I'm joined by Lauren Weiss, who is a behavioral nutritionist specializing in the low-carb ketogenic lifestyle. She worked as a nutrition scientist at the University of California, San Diego for over a decade, and now owns a clinical nutrition practice in La Jolla, California. Lauren is a certified ketogenic nutrition specialist and currently offers remote ketogenic and metabolic health consulting all over the world. She is also a contributing writer for dietdoctor.com, and I wanted to have Lauren on today. She had actually been on episode 275 of the podcast talking about metabolic health. I will link up to that episode right here so you can watch that. And I wanted to chat with Lauren today about behavioral nutrition and how, if we're just strictly focused on what to eat and how to eat that, we're forgetting all the behaviors that got us into this mess that is our nutrition and our health today. So in the episode today, we chat about the different types of behaviors to watch for, how to set proper goals, how to plan out our meals, how to plan out our life, how to know what our triggers are so we can adjust for that, how to communicate our ketogenic diet or our nutrition choices to friends and family so we get the support we want, and a whole bunch of other things. I can't wait to share this interview with you. Before we do that, I want to thank my two sponsors today for making today's show possible. The first is Paleo Valley. They make some of my most favorite protein bars, beef snacks. They make beef protein, just all sorts of things. I will include a link up here so you can check them out, and also down below with a coupon code. And then also my friends over at Eaton Hemp, who make CBD products, lotions, tinctures, a whole bunch of things. I'm in love with their CBD because it actually works, and there's a whole bunch of science behind their brand. They are so incredibly committed to creating quality content and quality products. So really good stuff. So without further ado, let's cut over to this interview. Hey, Lauren, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for coming on the show again.
Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, so we were chatting about metabolic health, weight, insulin, fatigue on episode 275. And today we're going to be talking about behavioral nutrition and what that's all about. So I'm really excited to dive in.
Great.
Yeah, so in a couple of words, if people haven't listened to our episode 275, and I'll include a link in the show notes today for those that want to go deeper with us, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, your work, what you do, and your history of behavioral nutrition?
Right. So I'm what I call myself a behavioral nutritionist. I am a keto nutritionist too. So I kind of mesh those two concepts together. But what a behavioral nutritionist does is it helps people create and sustain behaviors that will help them not only achieve their health goals in the short term, but really create a lifestyle, a new dietary lifestyle change in order to sustain those changes over the long term. Because a lot of people think of a diet or keto diet as a short-term, quick fix situation. And unfortunately, if you change your behavior only in the short term and then you go back to your old eating behaviors, you're not going to be able to sustain either the weight loss or those health changes that you work so hard to achieve. So a behavioral nutritionist incorporates a lot of these behavioral ideas and identifies these behaviors and helps people really change them for the long term.
Amazing. And which came first for you? Studying nutrition or doing behavioral nutrition, or how did that play into your practice now?
Right. So I actually have a PhD in behavioral nutrition. So I knew that after I received a master's in nutritional biochemistry, I knew everything about nutrition, but you can tell someone for years and years how to eat, but you have to change someone's behavior and their mindset towards food. So after I finished my master's degree, I thought I really need to seek out a program to help me incorporate this idea of how do we change people's habits. And I ended up at Columbia University and received a PhD in behavioral nutrition.
That's amazing. And what sort of behaviors do you kind of look at? I'm sure this is a loaded question. There's probably millions, but kind of what do
Millions.
you see so people can really understand, oh, that's me, or oh, I do that, or I don't know how to fix that. Well, I definitely have that. What are the sorts of things that you're
Right.
seeing
So
in your
there's many
practice?
different categories of behaviors. Those behaviors, maybe they're self-monitoring. Maybe we track our calories. Maybe we weigh ourselves. But in terms of behavioral nutrition, it goes deeper than that. It goes really, how do we change our mindset? How do we change our psychology in the way that we live our lives? And a lot of people don't really make that connection between behavior and eating, but it is behaviors that drive what we eat and when we eat and how we eat and who we eat with. So really working through a lot of those behaviors, whether it's social support, whether it's your friends around you, your family around you that might influence the way you eat, or your cultural setting. There are so many different behaviors, and we all really haven't thought about that for a long time. So I really talk about and I identify those behaviors that really need to be changed in people in order to progress them from through the stages of change model, which is what I use when I work with clients. They come to me usually in a contemplation stage. What behaviors do I need to talk to them about, or do we need to identify to get them from thinking about making a change to actually preparing to make the change? And that is discussing maybe a family history of a medical issue, or maybe they have high blood sugar or prediabetes. So I educate them. Really, that beginning part is about educating people to really, instead of saying, oh, I want to lose 20 pounds, well, really thinking about not the number on the scale, but why do we want to get there, and how do we change those behaviors? And there's different behaviors that I identify through that continuum to help people get to where they want to be and sustain that long term.
And it sounds like also from you explaining the process, it might be a lot of repatterning also in how we communicate with others. Like one example that's coming to mind is perhaps the woman who wants to lose weight and, they think that they're reacting poorly to carbohydrates and perhaps they want to start a ketogenic diet, but they have a partner that's
Mhm.
influencing them and, but just have the pizza. It's just once and da 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 da. Is that sort of stuff also
Oh,
part of
I
behavioral
encounter
nutrition?
that all the time. I actually we talk about social support. I talk about in my first session, what is your family environment? Do you have children at home? Do you have a partner at home? Are they in support of this? I encounter a lot of people who have partners who are not in support of it. I have a letter that I create for people to give to their friends and family, just explaining what the ketogenic lifestyle is, because if you haven't been educated about it, there's a lot of misinformation out there that could really, really affect someone's progress on this diet. So I really, really discuss that, and especially through the holidays. I think I had a holiday program for November, December, and I really talk about those social situations where someone is going to say, oh, just have one piece of cake, it's not going to hurt you. But what they don't understand is we're trying to get our bodies fat adapted, and that one piece of cake or even the 4 bites of cake really is going to affect not only physically but mentally the process towards their health goals. So definitely social support is one. Identifying barriers to making the change. What are the barriers? I have people saying all the time, well, it's someone's birthday, and then it's Thanksgiving, and then it's Christmas, and then it's my birthday, and then I'm traveling. So really identifying that and working through, okay, you have a birthday coming up. What's our plan? What are we going to plan? You want a little bit of alcohol to drink. We have to think through that. So I really talk about that, something called decisional balance, weighing the pros and cons to making a change. What happens when you make the change, and what happens if you don't make the change? For instance, someone with prediabetes, if you don't make a change, you will end up with diabetes or some other manifestation of insulin resistance. So I talk about that and we write those down and we go through those together. Here are all the benefits of making a change, and here are the cons of not making the change. So, and everybody's different, and I'm able to identify what people need in terms of behavioral support by getting to know them.
And what a beautiful merriment, right? Between understanding the behavioral piece and then understanding the nutrition piece to kind of come together to really make lasting change. I think that's where a lot of people struggle. And you mentioned that also it's usually not enough. Would you agree to just say, I'm going to lose 20 pounds. Here's how I'm going to do it. Here are the foods I'm going to eat versus not going to eat. Okay, go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why the statistics for people who lose weight, they end up gaining it back, most of them. So I think the statistics, only 25% of people who lose weight actually maintain that weight loss for more than a year. And you work so hard to lose the weight, and then you go back to your old habits. So creating a lifestyle. I use the term keto diet just to describe what we're actually eating, but I never use, this is not a diet. This is a lifestyle. I think I talked about in my last podcast, this is a metabolic process. It is not a short-term fix. We need to keep moving forward, making sure that our bodies are maintaining this new metabolic process, this new fixing of our metabolism. And if we go back to our old behaviors, the weight is going to come back, or whatever that health issue is.
Exactly. And something you said earlier, you're at that party and somebody says, just have a little bit, it won't hurt you much. And you said the mental detriment. So it's not even the physical piece, but something I notice is once I have the XYZ thing, there's a lot of, internal dialogue about this decision, and I'm obsessed about it and I'm worried about it. And can you talk a little bit about what you see with the mental detriment piece?
Oh gosh, I see so much guilt and mental anguish when someone has gotten off the program. And I'm here when that happens to say, forget it. It's the past. I said, let me worry about that. You just move forward. And if they didn't have me for that, sometimes it would spiral out of control. It was one bite of cake, then it became the next day, it became donuts, and the next day it became a bagel. And now I've totally gotten off the program. I'm just going to go get out of control, and that does happen. But I'm here to say, forget it. Let me worry about it. You just move forward. Let's pretend like that didn't happen. And people need that because, and I said, don't feel bad. It happens with everybody. You're not the only one. Almost every single one of my clients have had, what I call a slip up. In terms of having too many carbohydrates or having something that they crave. And it's not, if it happens for weeks on end, yeah, that's going to affect it. But if it happens one time or two times, we learn from it. I have my clients journal. So when there is a situation like this, we write it down. We say, what happened this time? And when you encounter that same situation the next time, what are you going to do differently? You're going to be prepared. You are going to make some kind of keto sweet or keto treat so you have that available. So when you do have a dinner party or you do go to a social gathering, you have to be prepared for that.
I think also too, like what you're saying is the planning ahead. And you mentioned that not only can those, slipped up, it can be a very good learning lesson too, of knowing, if I'm going to be at a party and I don't have a plan, this is going to happen again. So how do I adjust for that? And how do we adjust for that? And I think a lot of people think it's ridiculous to try to do that. But I find when you don't plan, that's when just everything falls apart because you know that you're going to want something. Would you agree?
Yes, my whole program is about planning, and everybody knows you need to be planned. And I tell them, you wake up in the morning, you have your cup of coffee, you sit down and you think through your day. Where are you going to be? What food do you have available? And you need to be ready. I tell them, have a snack available. Even if you say, oh, I'm not snacking today, you need to have that available, because when you get hungry and you get too hungry, you make really poor decisions. So everything is about planning. I plan my dinner first. I think through my dinner, and then I work backwards every day. And that's what I tell my clients to do, because dinner is kind of the big meal, and that's going to make or break whether you stay within your macros or whether you kind of go off of your program. So think about dinner. And right now, in the middle of a pandemic, it's easier to think through your dinner, and you really need to plan more ahead than, pre-pandemic life. So that's why I think a lot of my clients have been so successful during this time, is because you really have to have the food home. We're not running to the grocery store every day like we used to anymore. So that has really, really helped. But planning is so important. You have to think ahead, and you have to think of events that happen. If somebody's birthday in a week, we say, okay, what's the situation? Where are you going to go? What's available? What are you doing in terms of alcohol? Let's have a pre-plan. One, so you don't go too far off the program, and two, so you don't feel guilty once you do have kind of a slip up for a day or two.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing you say is having a plan of I just won't eat anything is a horrible plan.
Horrible, because we know that's not going to happen.
It's so true. It's so true. And even too, I've noticed the best time for me to plan is right before bed. I'm super chill, and I just kind of go through the inventory of what's in my fridge. What
Yes.
have I got planned tomorrow? And then I just kind of jot it down of like, here's kind of what I'm thinking for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or snacks, or where I'm going to be and where I'm going to. And then the next morning, I kind of look at it as I'm drinking my coffee or having my water of like, oh, yeah, I like this. No, that was a bad idea. Something like that would work.
Exactly. And I give my clients different scenarios for the day. So if you're doing an intermittent fasting day, then maybe you're going to have 3 meals. If it's an intermittent, you're going to have 2 meals and a snack. If it's not an intermittent fasting day, the day is going to look different. But you always have to think about it ahead. For a ketogenic lifestyle, being prepared and being organized is the most important thing for success. So we work through that. My clients know if it's going to be a fasting day, it might look different than a non-fasting day. And they have different scenarios that we have gone through, so they understand, what their day needs to look like.
And I'm imagining that as I'm sure this is like a lot of things, as you're building this muscle and you're planning, it probably takes a lot of time at the beginning because you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. But over
Yes.
time, it becomes like second nature to be like, boop, boop, beep, boop, boop. That's my plan.
Right. So in the beginning of my programs, they have to log their food into an app. So they kind of figure out this is what I can and can't eat. And by the end of my program, it's my goal to wean them off of that. Start doing it every other day, and then start going longer without actually having to log. Because at the end of 6 weeks, you should pretty much know what your meals need to look like without having to log in, and make sure that you're staying within your macros. And people should know at that time, really start learning how to make keto recipes and be able to eat out and create a keto friendly meal while eating out. So we work through all of that also during my program.
And at the very beginning of our conversation, you were talking about the fact that people have a hard time keeping the weight off. And what I'm hearing from you now is very much of these patterns are changing. We're changing your behaviors. You're learning how to do this long term so that doing this long term becomes a lot more feasible because you're actually changing your behaviors around food. Did I get that right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, these behaviors that we're changing and thinking about our health and thinking long term, as I said, they can't go back to the old habits. So we're changing habits to create this lifestyle that's going to support this lifestyle for the long term. And that's why I don't focus on the number on a scale. We focus on so many other things. We focus on metabolic health. We focus on metabolic flexibility, and I have a really, really strong educational component to my program. My clients know almost everything there is to know about the ketogenic lifestyle and metabolic health by the time they're done with me. So I have 2 really long educational sessions up front, and then I do hold office hours weekly where I do talk about a topic that either came up that week for my clients or something that I feel it's time for people to be educated on that topic. So my clients are are deeply educated on the process. And that is so important in terms of behavior change as well.
Mm. And so you mentioned a little bit about metabolic health, and we talked about that a bunch in episode 275. Again, I'll include the link down below on the video and in the show notes for the recording. Appetite hormones and dealing with the metabolic function. How do we kind of layer that into behavioral nutrition when our mind is saying do this, but our body is saying something completely different? How do you balance that out?
Well, I educate my clients that there are going to be changes, and when you lose weight, your body's going to fight as hard as it can to get that weight back. It's just a survival mechanism. What makes this a lot easier is combining it with a ketogenic lifestyle. We know that the ketogenic lifestyle on its own, we know that ketones suppress appetite hormones. We know that the ketogenic lifestyle basically fixes our metabolism and decongests our mitochondria. So there are things in conjunction, behavioral nutrition with the ketogenic lifestyle, that actually make my job easier. It would be very hard for me to do my job promoting a low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet. So I watch my clients. I watch for reductions in hunger. I give clues on how to create more satiation. And across the board, I see it happen kind of at that 4 or 5 week mark. I see people eating less. I see people going longer without eating. I see people dropping the snacks. So the ketogenic lifestyle and the ketones and the metabolic process that happens actually prevents those appetite hormones from spiking too much. So it does make my job a lot easier. And the marriage of behavioral nutrition and keto really is the most successful health and weight loss program that I know of today.
It's so great. And I'm sure very fulfilling to do the job that you do of just seeing those changes happen and have the tools to provide that to your clients. That's awesome.
Yes, my favorite point in time during the program is when I have come to the realization that they have become fat adapted. You know, that is the ultimate goal of my program, is fat adaptation. And I see it, I see it in the macro reporting. I see it in the reporting of hunger and satiation to me. And I know when that happens. And my favorite thing is to text them and say, congratulations, you're pretty much fat adapted at this point. And a lot of the issues that you had have been resolved. You move forward, you'll become metabolically flexible. This is something that maybe only 5 or 10% of the world has ever achieved. And this is the greatest gift that you can give yourself. And it is a really exciting time for me when that happens.
And really, it's just the beginning, right? Like you think
And
back to,
yes,
yeah, it's just the beginning. Like,
right,
and you get
right.
really excited.
Yeah, and that keeps people motivated. Then, then the weight loss happens if that is a goal. But I never focus on the weight loss. I said, let me worry about the numbers. Let me worry about the number on the scale. Let me worry about ketone numbers. If I am concerned, I will let you know. But I don't want anybody obsessing about those numbers, because as we're getting metabolically healthy, we can't predict any of those numbers. I can help predict ketones, and I can help make suggestions on how we can increase ketones, meaning that our stored fat is being more mobilized. But I don't like anybody obsessing about the number on the scale, because that's never going to be beneficial down the road.
And do you feel like in a lot of ways that even could become a trigger? Like I know with behavioral nutrition, kind of like what we talked about, planning for certain things, knowing when somebody says something, how you kind of adjust that conversation. Could jumping on the scale and watching that weight number also be a trigger to going sideways?
I don't really see it a trigger. I mean, I do ask for people's weight, because and I tell them it lets me know if I'm doing my job correctly. It's not something for you. I need to know if we're progressing towards fat adaptation. And that's the number I need, though we also do weight circumference and body fat. But in order for me to know that I'm doing things correctly and that I've set the correct macros, I need to kind of know that number. I don't see it making people go sideways. People get upset if it's only half a pound a week or no pounds a week. I don't let that happen for too long. I know how to make changes. So at least for those people who are affected by the number, I know how to make that number go faster when we need to make it go faster, just for people to keep progressing towards that goal of fat adaptation.
Amazing. And I know that there are many women listening that have done either the ketogenic diet or different types of diets over and over and over. And the pattern, is like, I lose 15 pounds and then life happens, or I suck. My willpower is out the window.
Yeah.
I can't get beyond this. What is wrong with me? Any advice for a woman that's feeling like this over and over and over and over?
I would say that's probably 99% of my clients that come to me. And what I explain to them is your metabolisms are broken and it's not your fault. This is from all of our processed foods and all of our high carbohydrate diet that's been advocated from from those from our government for many, many, many years. And it is really not our fault that this happened. And I said, don't worry about it. We will fix this very, very quickly, but you have to listen to me. And that's when the deep education comes in. I talk to them about, what happens when you eat a carbohydrate and why we really have to reduce them now, and it's not forever. But right now, while we're trying to really fix our broken metabolisms, which is basically, what happens if you have extra weight, your metabolism's not working. You're not converting the food you're eating to energy. And once we train the body to do that, then we can talk about down the road what that's going to look like. But that's everybody that comes to me for advice or to work with me. That's basically my type of client that comes to me, and I talk them through it and, keep them encouraged and keep them moving in the right direction.
Beautiful. And as you're combining keto, low carb with behavioral nutrition, at the beginning, we were talking about the weight loss goal and how that isn't enough. How do we set realistic goals, and how can goals either affect us negatively or positively depending on how we set those goals?
Right. So for my program, we set weekly goals. So I send out a goal setting worksheet for everybody, and we set weekly goals. And sometimes I'll set the theme for those goals. So one week it might be, if you're just starting my program, staying under 25 grams of net carbs or staying within your macros. And as they progress through my program, those goals are going to change, but they're short-term weekly goals. They also have to write down not only their goal, but what tasks are they going to take for that week to achieve those. I will review those. If I think that the tasks are not going to help achieve the goal, I will send them a text or respond to that worksheet saying, why don't we try this? So, whatever that goal is, sometimes it's intermittent fasting goal. Let's start to incorporate fasting in, try it 3 days a week. Sometimes it will be exercise. Let's increase the activity, try walking 2 or 3 times a week. So it just depends on where they are in my program as to where we're setting our goals. I don't really do long-term goals. They can keep those to themselves in their mind. I don't really like to see those written down. If you want to weigh 132 pounds in 6 months, or whatever that is, that you really can't predict those numbers. And that's when I think a goal can negatively affect you. Oh, I wanted to be 120 pounds by New Year's Eve, right? You just can't. Those are really unattainable goals. You can't predict those. So really, those short-term weekly goals, and then they start to see their long-term goals as they progress through the program or through a change in lifestyle.
Right. So what I'm hearing is like, you're looking at the next step, not 500 steps away.
Yes.
To kind of stay focused. And then even further is to not only, because we do this a lot, we set a goal and we're like, okay, I got the goal, but then there's no plan behind it. And
Right.
So what I'm hearing you say is set the goal and figure out how you're going to get there and what actions need to happen in order to hit that goal.
Right. So that's why when they identify that goal, whatever that goal is for that week, and through my holiday program, 1 week it was try to make one new keto recipe. or start experimenting with side dishes for Thanksgiving, or what are your holiday meals going to look like. So it really helped just setting short-term achievable and attainable goals, right? So that's really, and so through my program, every week it's a new goal. I want to see someone working towards a goal, only 1 or 2 goals, not 50 goals, 1 or 2 that they can focus on every day, and they'll be able to be successful. If that goal is achieved by the end of the week, they can reset a new goal, and I will help them, what's next in line, what's the next goal we need to achieve. If there were some hiccups in that goal for that week, we just reset that same goal.
Yeah. So it sounds like getting ahead of it, planning, and
Yes.
also education. And I'd love to kind of pick your brain on this because it's something that I notice, especially with clients and just people on the internet talking about nutrition, is that people want the results, but they don't really want the education piece.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
They have to be educated. I mean, there's so much information out there on diets, on keto. They have to be deeply educated. And that is, I spend about an hour and a half my first session with people, and I deeply educate them. They know everything there is to know about the ketogenic lifestyle. I share with them all the current scientific research, and this is where the research is, and this is where it's going. I talk about the insulin resistance issues. I talk about the cardiovascular risk factors and the reduction of that. I talk about the neurological benefits of the ketogenic lifestyle, which is the most fascinating research for me in terms of Lou Gehrig's and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and traumatic brain injury and migraine. I mean, all that stuff. And a lot of people have some of those issues or a family history of those. And I really focus a lot on the education about keto and the carbohydrates. And I go deeply into the whole concept of metabolic health and metabolic flexibility. So at the end of at least the educational part of this process, they now have other reasons to pursue the ketogenic lifestyle. Most people come to me for weight loss. At the end, everybody wants all those other benefits that we get. So that really helps people progress towards this new lifestyle and towards making a long-term behavior change towards food.
Right, because without the education, you're still going in blind everywhere and you have no idea what you're doing. And
Right.
You're not informed to be able to make your own choices. And I think that's ultimately the goal. Like we talked about long term and making things feasible, having the education, understanding why you're doing what you're doing,
Yes.
I think allows you to be like, right, I do this because this happens and this happens. And I know what this is happening. And I know what happens when I don't do that thing.
Right. And it's my goal not to have people stay with me forever. By the end of the 6 weeks, they should be able to figure out what they need to do to move forward. If someone is not quite there, if they were severely insulin resistant and it took me a while to start creating more sensitivity, or the fat adaptation process happens slower, then that 6 weeks, they'll stay with me for longer. But it's not my goal for people to need me forever. It's my goal to educate them and to teach them really how to experiment with trial and error on themselves and how to move forward. But they should, by the end of my program, they should have all that information that they need to know in order to troubleshoot moving forward.
And something I think even beyond the education piece, or that really informs the education, and maybe a lot of women will connect to this, is you have a family, and I'd love to know like how your education informs how you raise children and what that looks like in your household with the skills that you have.
Yeah, so yeah, my kids know a lot about nutrition. I have a 10-year-old who is keto, and that's a choice that she makes. I have a 13-year-old who is not quite keto, but she definitely watches carbohydrates. She understands what happens to our carbohydrates. My keto daughter definitely tells my non-keto daughter, what happens when she puts a carbohydrate in her mouth. And I think a couple days ago, she got out her carb manager app and she wanted to put in everything her sister ate to see how many carbohydrates she actually ate for a day. I said, no, let's hold off on that. But they know the effects of excessive carbohydrates on their body. And we don't do a lot of sugar in my house. That's something that we don't do. That's a treat once in a while. And I do have some, keto sweets that are available. And for my 10-year-old, I can't take everything away from her. So yesterday I did make her some keto chocolate chip cookies. I don't do that personally in my ketogenic lifestyle because I don't miss those things and I don't crave those things. But for a 10-year-old, you do have to have some kind of replacements in order to help maintain that lifestyle. But nutrition and health and metabolic health is very, very important in my household.
That's amazing. And I think, just hearing you talk about your children and the choices they're able to make. And because they're educated, because they know this does that and that does that. And now I get to make a choice. How cool is that to watch your kids kind of go through that?
It's incredible. I mean, for my 10-year-old, she just the way I teach my clients, she asks me in the morning, what are we having for dinner? And if the dinner is purely keto for her, then she knows that maybe for breakfast or lunch, she might be able to have some carbs, but she would never eat carbs for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. She really kind of fasts in the morning. She doesn't do breakfast for a while. So she has become fat adapted. And I have seen a transformation in her body since that happened. So just like us adults, even the children have to think about where their carbs are going to come from. And it's never too early to learn that. It's not a free for all. It's not, oatmeal and cereal for breakfast and a sandwich and potato chips for lunch and a bowl of pasta for dinner. It just can't be that way anymore. And sodas in between and goldfish in between. We just can't do that anymore. So even for young children to think through their day and think, where some of these more processed carbs are going to come from. And it's just a once in a while thing, maybe once a day. It can't be all day long.
And what a gift to provide to your children. And they may not thank you now, but when they're 30, 40, and many of their friends are struggling too, I'm sure that time will come where they look to you and say, thanks, Mom. Thanks for equipping me with the tools that I needed to understand what's happening here.
Yes, I always tell them how lucky they are that they're going to have this knowledge moving forward, because at some point in time, anybody who continues, with the westernized diet is going to get in trouble, not only in terms of weight gain, but in terms of the conditions associated with insulin resistance. And a lot of them are silent, or the inflammation, which is so important right now, above and beyond chronic disease, so important for this, pandemic life. So they understand this and they know all this. And yeah, they do have a gift. And, if they're fat adapted, they're in control of their own destiny at that point.
Yes, completely. So you've mentioned a couple times your program, your offerings. I'd love for you to tell all of us where people can connect with you, work with you, learn about you. Where can they go?
So I have a website, lahoyanutritionalhealth.com, and there's a lot of information on there. Right now, I'm offering a 6-week, what I call ketogenic and metabolic health program. The ultimate goal, as I've talked about before, is to get your body fat adapted. It's a very intensive, immersive, concierge style program. I expect daily communication with me during that process. And it really is, it's needed. The education is needed. Sometimes I educate by text. If it's too much by text, then I will talk about whatever issue is that at the group office hours that we have every week. So people are invited to the group office hours. I'll talk about issues there. I'll talk about maybe the fat adaptation process. Different topics come up, but it really helps people seeing me every week, communicating with me every week, and working through whatever issues are happening now or happening in the future. And the ultimate goal is fat adaptation and metabolic flexibility.
That is brilliant, Lauren. Thank you so much for coming on the show again. I really
Thank you for
appreciate
having me
sharing.
again.
Oh, of course. Anytime. You're always welcome back. Lauren is just such a breath of fresh air in the ketogenic space, really helping people delve way deeper into their nutrition and fully understand their bodies and the choices that they're making and the behaviors that need to switch. So I hope you really enjoyed today's episode. You can connect with Lauren using the links down below. I will include that there. And also, if you haven't already, you can subscribe to my channel by clicking that little button right there. Click the bell if you want to be notified for future interviews and episodes we post here for the Keto Diet Podcast. And thanks so much for hanging out with us today. Bye.